Whatever. Oh, we're live. Jolly good.
We're live. Brilliant. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ubuntu Community Team Q&A live on the internet. If you're watching this through ubuntuonair.com, there's this big chat thing below the video widget. Just put in your nickname, whatever you want to be called, and hit the join button, because that way you can ask all the questions you might have about Ubuntu or the private life of Alan Pope.
People get to hear about that far too much.
Okay. In any case, whatever question you might want to ask, please make sure you prefix it with question in capital letters, so we can pick up the questions more easily. I'm just going to briefly say hello to the folks on IRC and mention the same thing.
Okay, so while Daniel's doing that, I'll mention that we do this every week. It's not always myself and Daniel. Sometimes it's Nick and Mike or David or whoever in the community team is not super busy that day. Sometimes we have guests. If there's anyone you'd like us to talk to, any guests you'd like us to have on, let us know. Any particular topics you'd like us to talk about or get people on to talk about, let us know. Sometimes we don't have guests because people are just super busy, or we haven't had any suggestions for people to get on. So get your suggestions in and we'll see if we can get people on. Obviously it's dependent upon their schedule and how busy they are, and that leads me nicely on to how busy everyone is leading up to lots of important dates. Daniel, you wanted to talk about the upcoming release dates and milestones, didn't you?
Yeah, just one quick thing before I forget it, or otherwise Jose is going to be on our backs. Make sure you follow the Ubuntu On Air Twitter account, the YouTube account, the Google Plus account, and whatever else you might find, because that way you get updated about upcoming shows. You can watch all the old shows when you were asleep or too busy with something else. So please make sure you do that. Jose is going to be your new best friend.
Awesome.
Holy cow, we have the first questions already. Shall we, or shall we? What do you want to do?
Let's batch them up and do the announcements first, and then batch up the questions and do those afterwards. We can burn through them.
Right, let's do that. Okay, let me have a quick look at my notes. Adam Conrad just sent an email this morning saying it's we have the final beta freeze coming up. That means we soon want to get out the beta for the 14.10 release, which means that from now onwards we just fix the critical bugs. We fix all the bugs we can find. So now is the perfect time to go and test Ubuntu. Just download an ISO, run it in a virtual machine, or install it on your disk and find all the bugs you find. Or if you're interested in fixing bugs, now is the perfect time to get all the bug fixes in.
And it's worth mentioning that this is the freeze for the desktop release that will come out in the end of October. So the typical release cycle we have of every 6 months. The desktop, we talk about the phone and tablet a lot, but we are actually still doing a desktop release every 6 months. And so we're talking here about the final freeze for the archive for Utopic, which will become 14.10. We have some exceptions which allow us to put some of the phone-related packages in the archive. So we'll continue some bug fixing and development work on the phone. So don't think that because the desktop is freezing, the phone is freezing in exactly the same way. There are some exceptions we have for the phone. So the release schedules are slightly offset because the desktop is fixed on the 6-month release cycle, but the phone is more related to when manufacturers believe it to be ready for them to release. So
exactly.
It's slightly different, yeah.
Yeah. So everything Alan just said was correct. So all the stuff we used to do before, so desktop, server, Kubuntu, Ubuntu Studio, all of that stuff, still is sticking to the old release cycle, but what's happening on the phone is probably the closest to get the closest we're going to get to Rick's rolling releases. So all the good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff going to land there later on.
Yeah, it's quite good fun when when a new image is built each day overnight, and you update your phone. Depending upon what channel you're on, you either get lovely magical new stuff like yesterday a new keyboard landed, or you get magical broken phones like today. So you have to be a little bit careful about which channel you choose, and we're expecting the people who are using it right now are. They're on bleeding edge, so people are using a spare phone for doing their Ubuntu phone related stuff. But there is a more stable channel as well, which doesn't break on a daily basis. So if you're interested in trying out Ubuntu for phones, then drop by the Ubuntu Touch IRC channel. There's also an Ubuntu phone mailing list. You can get in contact with us there as well. What other announcements have we got, Daniel?
Just a second. I thought maybe we could chat a little bit about the touch channels. I think that's fairly interesting and was something which got announced just last week or something.
Was this the mail from Ollie about the release cadence?
I think it was part of some landing team email. Let me just quickly share my screen. Doesn't work. All right. In that case, if you go to wiki-ubuntu.com/landing-team/touch channels, you can see all the different channels we currently have. I'm going to share the link on IRC. But a lot of them you don't really need to care about right now. For example, Ubuntu Touch/stable is one that we don't use anymore, and one bit you need to be a bit careful about, especially if you use this on your one and only device and you're not happy to beta test everything. There's all the dash proposed channels. They are for images which have yet to go through QA testing.
Exactly. So you can kind of think of our stable channel as being like Debian old stable. It's quite old now. There's no maintenance on it. It's not the latest and greatest. We then have our testing kind of channel, which we call Devel, and that's way more stable and way more up to date. And you only get updates in terms of system updates there if it's passed a certain criteria, the QA criteria, and that's automated testing and manual testing as well. But as Daniel says, the proposed one is the bleeding edge. That's like Debian experimental.
Yeah, and especially if you consider, if you're looking at stable and you're considering that there was no finished product or there was no actual release of it yet. It was still the days where it was called a tech preview or something. So it's very safe to ignore the stable one for now. But the new keyboard is fantastic, especially in a German keyboard where you have the Ü, Ö, Ä, the umlauts and everything. You used to have like loads and loads of keys. It was trying to have a keyboard like this and get it like this small, and now it's just brilliant to use. Loads of fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it looks nicer as well. I prefer the font. It's a little bit larger. The buttons are an easier target, and the placement is much better. So we've got a whole bunch of critical bugs that we're working on before we release a final phone image, and everyone's working incredibly hard to get rid of all those critical bugs. Most of them are in the platform itself, the shell, in some of the default applications like the camera and the dialer, and also some of the hardware related stuff. audio drivers, GPS driver, that kind of stuff, the kind of low-level bits and pieces. Most of the apps are perfectly fine, but it's most of the critical bugs are in the lower levels, which are getting most of the attention at the moment.
And I was hoping I could invite some new folks to help out with the core apps, and you say they're mostly done.
The core apps, yes, they are mostly. There's a few exceptions to that. There's a couple that need a redesign, which is pending, and there's a couple that are not as far along because their development either stalled or was not started until fairly recently. So the doc viewer, for example, has seen a resurgence. We had a volunteer turn up on the mailing list just last week and say, "Hey, I'd like to contribute to the doc viewer," and that got a load of people interested, and suddenly there's been a flurry of work on the doc viewer app, which is brilliant. It's people just grab the code because it's free software on Launchpad, grab the code and start updating it, start filing bugs, fixing existing bugs, and so on. So that's really cool. And the other one is our Trigita email client. There's a kind of early version of that that we're using called Deco in the store, which Dan Chapman and the other guys working on the email client have put into the store. That's really cool. So if you want to try Deco, the email client, DEKKO, then do so and file any bugs you find on Launchpad, and we'll pass those fixes upstream to the Trigita project.
Brilliant. So for core apps, what kind of people could apply for this, or if they're interested, like some people have done programming, or you mentioned designing, is this something people could help with?
Yeah, certainly. We have got the Canonical design team working on some of the apps. Mm-hmm. There are some that haven't had much of a redesign. There's not been any design work done, for example, on the doc viewer. Mm-hmm. So that could do with some design input, certainly. The others, mostly in terms of what work there is to do, is detailed in bug reports. So you'll find if you go to the wiki.ubuntu.com/touch/core apps, then each of the apps is listed in the header at the top of that wiki page, and you can get to the bug tracker for each of them. And they have, most of them only have a very minimal number of high priority or critical bugs. The community developers jump on those really quickly. They're all a real pleasure to work with. All of the community guys who work on the core apps, they just jump on these bugs, and they're poking us to say, hey, can you get input from someone for this because there might be a platform related issue, or can you review my changes to the UI for this screen or something like that. And they're all really working hard on those, have been for the last 18 months or so.
Fantastic.
But if anyone's interested in getting involved, then just ping me on IRC or drop me an email. I'm not hard to find online. And I can point you at any one of the apps. If you have a particular preference, then by all means, get in contact with the developers of that app. Or if you're not really sure, then let me know. We can find an app that most fits your skills.
Excellent. And it's not really hard to test any of the apps. You don't even need to have a device. Also, if you have a bit of experience with JavaScript or QML, or just a little bit of programming experience, you can certainly help out there.
Yeah, and there are also other areas that are kind of related that are not specifically core apps, but underlying related technologies like the GeoIP lookup or the media scanner, or there are lots of other parts that people can get involved in if they really want to.
Testing, automated testing, there's loads and loads of stuff.
Yep.
And it's just great to know that you're looking at a phone, or people around the world are going to look at the phone, and you could point to a small thing that was your work. That's brilliant. That's really special.
Or even a big thing. I mean, so some of the apps, like the clock, for example, is like an absolutely critical component of a phone. I know there's a prevalence at the moment for people getting excited about smart watches, but I still, I don't wear a watch, as you can see. I tend to use my phone as my timepiece, and so the fact that Neklesh, who's been working hard on the clock app, is going to have that critical piece of functionality on a whole load of phones, all around the world very soon. Andrew and Victor working on the music app. People listen to music on their mobile device all the time when they're commuting or sat at their desk and they want to zone out for a bit and listen to some music. These are critical components on any phone, not just ours. And to think that these are community maintained free software that is going to be used by potentially millions, I'd like to say billions of people around the world, but maybe one day. It's exciting. So, have we waffled on enough? Are there some questions for us?
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
Okay, where's the first one? Okay, just Caracas asks, Popey, on how many podcasts are you on the moment, and what is your favorite one?
Okay, so there's a podcast. That's a good question. There's a couple of podcasts that are really cool. One's Ubuntu Podcast, which is the one that I started with some friends in the UK Loco team, and that's obviously my favorite because we started that, and we do that every week, and we put out a show every Wednesday. Every other Wednesday is live, and on a Thursday, we put the show out on the podcast feed. If you just search for Ubuntu UK Podcast, you'll find it. And I like that because it's kind of informal, and I get to meet up with my friends and drink tea and eat cake, and we interview people and talk about Ubuntu and talk about the news. It's quite nice and relaxing. And then there's another one that's quite interesting that I sometimes, if I can find time, go on, which is it's by Jupiter Broadcasting, and it's called Linux Unplugged, and it's on a Tuesday evening. So tonight, as we're recording this in a few hours, it's usually on, it's really good. They've got a lot of audience participation via Mumble. So if you've got Mumble installed, you can jump on their Mumble server and vent your spleen at Chris Flisher and discuss whatever the tech news of the week is at the moment. And they're both my favourites at the moment. Oh, and another one actually, Linux Luddites is really good. It's a couple of guys who don't really like all the new stuff. They prefer all the old stuff. So if you're a bit of a curmudgeon and you like the old desktops and you prefer the command line, then you'll appreciate the stuff that they talk about. So Linux Luddites is another good one as well. That's worth listening to.
And your favorite one?
Well, obviously I have a soft spot for the one that I started. So yeah,
Makes sense. All right, next question. Hugo31 asked, why is it not possible to adjust the color depth in Ubuntu? So while Alan was just listing the hundreds of podcasts he's involved with, I did a bit of research. If you go to askubuntu.com, there's loads and loads of questions and answers on this one. I think that might be the best use of our time if we just have a look there. It seems to be answered there for different versions of Ubuntu and different flavors of Ubuntu as well.
Interesting. I'd completely forgotten. So that's in the display thing where you set the resolution. I'd completely forgotten that there ever was a dialogue for setting the color depth of the screen. So
yeah. I don't think I've ever touched it.
No.
Koza Chris asks, what about Ubuntu Phone? Will coming phone with OS or? I think the answer to this is yes. So that's what we're working on right now, and two manufacturers, BQ and Meizu, are both going to ship Ubuntu chip phones with Ubuntu pre-installed. Maybe I can find a. Alan, do you have a link to one of the announcements? I mean, if you just search for Ubuntu and phone on Google News or anywhere else, you get bombarded with this.
Yeah, most of the kind of press announcements go on our insights. I think it's insights.ubuntu.com.
Right.
And that's where Jane or Steve George or Chris Perino tend to post the executive level announcements, go on insights. So yeah, if you just look for insights, BQ, MyZoo, you'll find it straight away, the announcement. The announcement was made a little while ago, those two partners, and things have gone a little bit quiet. We still talk about them quite a lot, and things are still moving forward for both of them. It's kind of behind the scenes conversations that are going on and testing, and when it's ready, you'll know. we'll make a really big song and dance about it when it's ready. But don't worry that because there's been no announcements since then that anything's stopped. It's certainly not. We're still working very hard on that. The whole company is working hard on that, and the community maintainers as well. So yeah, it's you'll know as soon as there's a phone available.
Yeah, and I think the point where you can buy phones, it's measurable in weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of critical bugs is going down and down and down. So
yeah.
And the great thing is, we mentioned this before, it's open source. It's something I would like. I started using Ubuntu and playing around with Ubuntu and getting involved around 10 years ago, and I would never imagine there would be phones with Ubuntu on them with all the stuff in the archive. That's just brilliant.
Yeah, I find it quite fun that if I really want to, I can SSH into my phone and use apt-get to install some random thing and run it on my phone, which is like I've done like silly stuff like install all the build tools on my phone and compile ARM binaries directly on my phone. It gets a little warm when you do that. Right. if you're doing something pretty intensive. Phones aren't usually meant to be build devices, but it's good fun.
If it gets cold on the train or something, you could
pocket hand warmer. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just build a kernel and then keep my hands warm. Yeah.
LibreOffice until you run out of memory.
But that's one of the things I like about this is it's kind of made Linux a bit more exciting for me. For years the desktop has been, for a long time the desktop was, I've got to modify my xorg.conf, and it was exciting when you got it working, or my webcam doesn't work and I rebuild this driver and now it does. That it was hacking around and it was good fun. And then it got to a point where pretty much everything just works, and that's the point for some of us. It gets a bit boring when when every day everything works. It's like, well, what can I break today? So yeah, that's partly why I find the phone stuff exciting, is because it's new, it's different, it's interesting. It's cool.
It is, yeah. Right. Next question. Oh, you're going to love this one. E.g. Some asks, any plans for building an applications development environment which make Linux, Ubuntu apps development and packaging easier and faster?
Yeah, we have an SDK. I think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, so we've got an SDK, and if you go to developer.ubuntu.com, you can download the SDK. At the moment, the target is to run the SDK on Ubuntu. So if you're running 14.04 or 14.10, you can run the SDK, and it will let you develop or make it easy for you to develop phone apps and desktop apps and converged apps in the future for Ubuntu desktop, phone, tablet, in the future, fridge, car, whatever. And it's based around Qt Creator. So if you've ever used Qt Creator, then you'll recognize it, with some plugins added to make it tailored for Ubuntu phone. So you can already use Qt Creator to develop your C++ or your Qt applications or QML or whatever, but we've added some plugins so that you can do things like create emulators so that you can test your applications without having a device. There's also plugins that allow you to connect to an actual device. So if you do have an Ubuntu phone, like a Nexus 4, for example, running Ubuntu, then you can plug it into the USB cable, and using the Ubuntu SDK, you can develop an app and then press a button, and it will send it down the cable to the phone, and then start the application on the phone. And you can, debug and trace it on the phone from the desktop. It's still under very heavy active development, so it's not finished. And the guys who are working on it, Zoltan, Benjamin, and the rest of the SDK team are working hard on the tools. And it changes month to month. It's quite exciting.
But it already is like magic.
And we use it. The core app developers, the guys who are developing apps like music, clock, calculator, calendar, and so on, they use the SDK. So we have a bunch of people who are actively using it, and they're filing bugs and suggesting changes in the SDK, which is working out quite well. So yeah, I think that answers your question, I hope.
Yeah, and you can also use it to develop Ubuntu HTML5 apps, and there's a Go plugin as well. Although I'm not quite sure how far we get with the documentation there. But yeah, if you're into Go, use it.
I think we've hired a couple of people recently in order to improve the documentation around the developer experience. So if you find it is a bit lacking at developer.ubuntu.com, we are working on it. It's a fast-moving target. Both when you think about it, the phone is changing on a daily basis, and the SDK is changing on a daily basis, and the apps are changing on a daily basis. So keeping the documentation up to date is actually pretty hard, because it's an entire move. It's 3 moving targets all at once that we're trying to write documentation for. So bear with us on the documentation front. But if you're interested in writing some, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and on developer.ubuntu.com you should find report a bug about this page at the bottom of each page. So if you find anything that is inaccurate, let us know, or if you have examples you want us to add or anything else, let us know.
Cool.
Right. Next question from Haji. Hello, my name is Haj. I'm from Algeria. My question is, can I build and launch a storage cloud on few PCs on virtual machines? What softwares to use? Thanks.
I don't know. Is the answer to that?
Yeah. Same here. I guess the answer would involve something like Juju, but I have only very briefly used Juju in my life. But you could try to find Jay Castro on IRC. I'm sure he would love to help you with that one.
Yep, he's the guy to speak to.
But yeah, for starters, you could try Juju Ubuntu.com or the Juju IRC channel, and just maybe add a bit of explanation what exactly you're trying to do, and people will help you out with that. We have a Hazen who says, "Devil proposed for the win." And then another question from Just Caracas. Are there plans to bring something like Bloop phone? And then a link. It was created for a showdown, if I remember correctly, to Ubuntu Touch. Maybe integrated in the messaging app by default would be awesome. I'm just having a quick look at.
So it says Blob Phone is an application for Ubuntu systems for sending SMS. The SMS will appear as if it was sent directly from your mobile phone. Oh, I see. Interesting.
I don't know, maybe it would be worth having a chat with the people who are working on this.
It says there is an Ubuntu app for download. There's a PPA with it in. I don't know. This is the first I've heard of this, and it looks like it's 2 years old, so I don't know how well maintained it is. So you probably want to speak to Marcus Lanner, who looks like he's the maintainer of this application. It's on GitHub as well. But interesting.
Yeah, I could imagine that if you had to rewrite the UI parts of it, it would be very easy to do it in QML, but it might also be worth to have a chat with uh, maybe somebody from the security team to see how you can hook it up with whatever is sending the text messages. So I don't know. It might be worth to also bring it up on the Ubuntu phone mailing list. Okay. We have more questions. A. Hazen asks, do you think silent mode and mobile data are big enough use cases to have a toggle in the sound and network indicator?
Well, silent mode is in the indicator, in that if you pull down the sound menu on your phone like this, and then tap the left-hand end of the speaker there, it sends the slider all the way to the left, so effectively silences your phone. Which I only just discovered by pressing it.
I just learned something new. Not bad.
Who says Ubuntu isn't intuitive? I just stabbed that end of the button and it worked. So
brilliant.
Yeah, I can see where the question that A. Hazen is asking is going. That the indicators that you see on Ubuntu Touch, the ones up the top of the screen there, when you pull them down, they have various settings in, and these settings have changed over time. So it may well be that at some point in the past there was a setting which has now disappeared, and there might be a setting that wasn't there that now is. So what happens is we are constantly reviewing this with users and also with the manufacturers, and we do usability tests with people we basically knock on the head and drag in off the street and put a phone in front of them and ask them to try out various things, and we record the troubles that they have with the phone, if there are any troubles, like if they're finding it difficult to take a photo or finding it difficult to mute the phone, or any of those kind of use cases that a typical user wants to do with the phone. And so if we do find that there are problems, then we may move things around in the UI or file bugs and ask developers to fix them or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think there is an argument for some settings to be moved to be surfaced from the settings app to the indicators, definitely. And yeah, muting is certainly one of them. And I know this comes from a mailing list thread that came up where so the network menu here shows a section up here where your 3G connection is, and a section down here with your Wi-Fi connection. And while there's a button to turn off Wi-Fi, there isn't actually a button there that turns off 3G only. There's only a button for flicking the Wi-Fi on and off, and then there's a flight mode, which turns everything off. So I can see an argument why you might want to turn off 3G, for example, if you want to conserve your data or conserve your battery. I can see an argument for that. Yeah, I guess there needs to be a discussion about what buttons you surface there and how many of them, because you don't want to fill that settings thing with thousands of buttons that control everything, because then you're just duplicating the settings app. But being neither a UI designer nor the maintainer for that part of the phone, I can't fix that.
Yeah, I can also see how it's a difficult question. Like, I think in this specific case, I would intuitively just say, yeah, makes perfect sense, let's add it. But I think you could say the same thing about a lot of things, and very soon you would have this gigantic, cluttered interface with loads of stuff on there. So
it's a difficult balance, yes, and we defer those kind of questions to the design team, because they get final say on that, and they're the people who take input from the usability testing that gets done. So it's not that the design team say this is how it must be, and then if none shall pass and it won't change. They come up with the initial design, and then after usability testing, we discover that actually there's a target that's hard to hit on the screen, or button's not big enough, or you need to move something around, and so it is constantly evolving. I think this is one of the big positives and a slight negative of developing in the open like this is, we don't do the Apple thing. I've mentioned the Apple thing before, where there's a big ta-da and you get to see the interface for the first time at some keynote. We get to see the interface evolving over time, and you might WTF and question it, and it's still evolving. It's not done yet. It's not like you can't go out to a shop right now and buy a phone with this broken UI component, because nobody's selling the phone yet. It's not finished. So there's plenty of opportunity, and that's a good thing, because everyone can feed into that and post their messages to the mailing list and report bugs and give feedback and say, look, this bit's broken, this was hard to use, and propose solutions, propose new designs. But the downside is everyone gets to see the day that it's broken. What's it like that? It's both a huge benefit and a bit of a pain in the backside as well.
On the other hand, I think everyone who worked on this has done a great job. For example, stuff like the gestures. I think they're so intuitive. I've seen friends of mine who use iPhones or Android phones, and like flicking through apps or something, it's something they instantly try to do on their phone as well. Like, it's something that really sticks. So there's a lot of really great things about the phone, and also that it's not cluttered yet. So yeah, let's see how the conversation turns out.
Okay, so next question from A. Hazen. Which bug that's left for RTM bugs you the most? Okay, so let me get the link so you can see the list of RTM bugs. So the bugs are all in Launchpad, so you can certainly see them. I've just pasted a link. Unfortunately, it's a raw IP address and a port number. Don't be put off by that. It is a perfectly fine link. And in that link, you can see loads and loads of bugs. And I don't necessarily have any myself personally. I could scroll through that list and pick off a few and say, oh yeah, we should definitely fix that. I think probably the one that stands out for me more than anything. Well, there's two. One is performance. I'd like to see an improvement in app startup time, and I know that's being worked on. And I would like there's a bug that I filed recently about when our application lifecycle will stop an application that's in the background, so that if you start lots and lots of applications, they don't all consume all your memory and all your resources and and your battery and so on. So the application lifecycle will kill off applications that have been running for a long time that are running in the background. And the transition from an app being killed to an app being restarted is a little bit stark. And so there's a little UI improvement, a little smoothing out there that could be done. The rest of them are just, bugs, like you get in any platform. You know, weird behaviors, things not working quite the way they should, things not being exactly to the design specification, Then there's like system level things like log files can grow to a stupid size, which means that the disk can fill up on your phone, and that shouldn't happen. So things like that. But there's lots of them, but there's fewer and fewer of them every day, which is good.
Exactly. Yeah, for me, the one thing we should fix is probably trying to make scopes a bit more obvious. I think the idea of scopes is absolutely fantastic, but up until now we have, I don't know how many hundreds of apps already, so we have quite a bit of experience with apps already, but I think just a few scopes have landed in the store. If you're interested in scopes, we also have documentation on this. It's not 100% up to date. That's going to be up to date in about 2 weeks or something. We're working on this. Again, moving target. But the great thing is, once you work on the scope, you can just upload it the same way to the store, and people can update it and get it on their phone the same way. What's great about scopes is that you can aggregate loads of different data, and being able to just swipe through the different scopes you favorited on your phone is just fantastic. It's very, very quick. It's just there, so that's great. But it could be a bit more intuitive how to search for something or what it means. Using apps is just a bit more intuitive right now.
Yeah, and I think as we get more scopes, that gets easier.
Yeah.
You know, once people discover, you know, how scopes should work, you know, they discover the best way for them to work.
Exactly.
Cool.
Srini asked a question. Do scopes will have content filter to block unwanted content? No idea. I don't know. Might also be a question for the Ubuntu phone mailing list.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I know that right now there's no content controls in the phone, so there isn't like a switch you can flick in system settings that, you know, says make all the bad stuff on the internet go away. Which, you know, is a hard problem to solve in a
Yeah.
single switch. But you know, I don't know if there, you know, if there's plans to be any, you know, age rating stuff for apps or for scopes or the content that you get within scopes. I know that is a hard problem to solve, and it's not solved on any platform. Well, actually, it kind of is, but the only platform it's that I'm aware of where it's a solved-ish problem are the really heavily controlled and curated platforms, like the Nintendo Wii and the Xbox 360, where you can't get in the store until you pass a certain certification, that kind of thing. Those are the areas where, you know, do you go down the route of having an authoritarian control over what appears on your phone, or do you want the freedom to do whatever you want with your phone? And there has to be a balance somewhere in the middle. And at the moment, we're nearer the other end, the freedom end, than we are the, you know, control and the blocking and that kind of stuff. But it's certainly a question that we need to talk about, and I think it's something we should talk about at the next Ubuntu Open Week Online Summit. And you know, have a discussion about how we would implement those kind of controls, both at the app level, the scope level, and you know, what we allow access to, and give people the tools to be able to make those decisions themselves.
Yeah.
Rather than enforce it. You know, if I were to buy a phone for my daughter, you know, what could I do, you know, to maybe prevent them spending a lot of money on my phone, or, you know, buying a lot of in-app purchases, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would want to know what kind of controls that we could make effectively.
Yeah, so it's really like a good discussion for online summit, or if it's an urgent feature you need, bring it up on the mailing list beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Another question from A. Hazen. Are there plans to keep and/or redesign workspaces in the move to Unity 8? Good question.
What's interesting is, you know, we've had workspaces in Ubuntu and Unix in general for years and years and years, and OS 10 now has it, and I hear Windows 9 is now getting multiple desktops. So, you know, it's interesting that mainstream operating systems are getting multiple desktops. I would be surprised if we don't have it in Unity 8.
Yeah.
You know, at the moment, Unity 8 is very heavily focused on the phone and tablet UI, and less so the desktop. Yeah, it would make total sense for us to have some way to manage multiple workspaces desktops in some way. I don't know how that's going to happen. Whether there's going to be some magical gesture in order to do that.
And right now we're also very focused on full screen UIs, and I could imagine that that would be a problem we would try to solve before looking into workspaces. But yeah, I couldn't see us not having workspaces. It's probably a question of how we could design this so it feels intuitive and it makes sense where you place your windows and everything. But yeah, I don't know anything about it. It's probably something we should also get on the agenda for online summit to see what's next in the run to fully converge.
Well, yeah, I in the next online summit we're going to be talking about the plans for the next version of the desktop 1504. And right now we have a Unity Next preview ISO image that you can download. That's a preview that runs Unity 8 on Mir. And it's very limited because, as I said, we haven't focused heavily on Unity on the desktop. So yeah, there are gaps. Window management and real basic fundamental things are missing, as well as multiple desktops.
Right. Let's move on to the next question. It's from Progressive, and it's an interesting question. The question is, why can't we have universal images to support any Android phone, like it supports any damn PC? So, Progressive, whoever it is on the internet, it makes sense. Like, we have Ubuntu, which supports almost every PC you could think of, and then you have a bazillion different phones, and we just support 2 or 3 of them. Why do we do this?
As I understand it, the main reason is that the Intel architecture that your desktop and your laptop uses has a very well-defined method for device discovery and driver loading and unloading. So for example, if I put a CD into a machine that's got an Intel CPU, then if there are any particular quirks to do with that Intel CPU, the Linux kernel will load those necessary quirks. If I put a CD into a machine that has an Intel video driver versus an AMD video card, then it will dynamically detect that and load the necessary drivers. And the same goes for every other subsystem in the PC world. But as I understand it, in the ARM world, there isn't that device discovery. So there isn't like ACPI for device discovery and other technologies that have existed for years in Intel. And so you generally have to build your own kernel for the device that has in it the drivers for that device. And a lot of them are proprietary. So, if you buy a phone that has a chip that comes from Qualcomm, that will have a different GPU than another device which has a chip that came from TI, for example. And because those two are entirely separate manufacturers, they're both made to an ARM specification, but they have additional bits in them, the GPU, for example, which uses completely different drivers. And that's a tricky problem that ARM and people in the ARM world like Linaro and Qualcomm and the TIs of the world need to solve.
Yeah.
But it's the world we live in at the moment, and so the world we live in at the moment is you have to have a kernel specific to an ARM device, and that's why we only support a small number of devices. Is because the porting of the kernel to those devices is quite time-consuming, hard work, and intensive. So it's much easier for us to just focus on a smaller number of devices like the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 7 and the Nexus 10.
Exactly. That's one of the really big reasons, and it's interesting that you mentioned Linaro. Linaro is a working group of many different companies. Canonical was one of the key founding members, and since Linaro, we had a lot of merging going on in the upstream kernel tree when everything related to ARM. So things got better and easier in the ARM kernel world in the last few years. But just if you have a look at projects like CyanogenMod, these people, they put a lot of effort into the kernel patches. So if you try to use CyanogenMod for your phone, if that's possible, there was a lot of work behind the scenes trying to get this right, to make it all work, and you would have to do similar amounts of work to get this working on the Ubuntu phone. That's just one piece of the puzzle. Another piece is if you give out loads and loads of different phones to loads of different people and say, okay, let's build this Ubuntu phone together, you would have to look at a lot of different hardware bugs, or if somebody used a different video driver, you might expose a different problem in Mirror, or the automated testing we're doing right now. It's actually a good thing that we only have 1 or 2 or 3 different devices where things are automatically tested, because people can all look at the same bug and the same issue. It's only in recent years that if you use Ubuntu and you're looking at a bug, a lot of people could probably agree that it's the same issue they're looking at. I think 10 years ago we had loads and loads more hardware-related issues. Things have gotten a lot better in the last time, but in the phone land, it's still more difficult. So I hope that in 5 years, when we look back, we're going to laugh about this. So let's see how things look in 5 years. All right, Hugo31 is back with another color depth question. It says, guys, sorry to come back with this. I explained better my question and why it is important to have a native color depth change. I have a A8 16BG memory computer. I'm quite sure what that means. And I can't play fluently simple games like Tetris on Facebook. 4 or 5 exclamation marks. The reason is that it's tuned to 16 million colors. If I could have 8 millions or 4 or even grayscale, it will a small step for dev, but a huge step for Ubuntu spreading.
I have never heard of that problem before. I don't think that's a, in general, I don't think that's a massive issue for most people. It sounds like a quirk with your video driver. Like, I don't know what video card you have, but it sounds like a quirky thing with the video driver. I don't understand why having your display set to lots and lots of colors would cause that.
Same here.
Video driver issue. Sorry.
If you run an NVIDIA card, you probably can try different NVIDIA drivers, or
I mean, you can fiddle with the. I know you can fiddle with the color depth by editing your xorg.conf, but that's the problem should be fixed rather than you working around it by fiddling the color depth, in my opinion.
Yeah. Probably makes sense to file a bug on xorg or something. Right.
So next question.
Yep.
Yeah. Go for it.
Progressive. PCs too have unique codes, and we have different distributions of Ubuntu for 32 and 64-bit PCs. So why can't we make different images for different ARM versions? First one would be for ARM 7, I suppose.
I think we've covered that one, really.
Yeah. And ARM v7, ARM v8, that was... Yeah, if you search for this on the internet, you're going to find the justification why we use the ARM we focused on. Okay, another question from Progressive. How can I add touch support to my 10-finger multi-touch supporting laptop for Unity and all other applications to make it more touch friendly?
So we have a touch input framework in Ubuntu, and as I understand it, it supports multi-touch. I don't know if it supports as many as 10 fingers, but it has some gestures for up to 2, 3, and 4 fingers. I know that for grasping and 3 fingers to move a window around, that kind of stuff. I don't know any more about that.
Yeah, I don't know, 10-finger multi-touch sounds a bit like a Star Trek kind of interface to me. But what is the Unity IRC channel? Is this
It's
Ubuntu-Unity?
Ubuntu-Unity, yes.
Right.
That
So
would be
there
a
you
good
go.
place to go, yeah.
Yeah, might be the best place. Okay. Next question. Uh, so do you mean there can be universal images for Intel-based phones?
Well, not necessarily, because even an Intel-based phone may have quirky hardware that has, proprietary drivers and so on. So you may still need a custom kernel even for an Intel-based phone, because it's still going to have weird things like GPS, compass, altimeter, whatever they're called. Is it an
Sensors.
altimeter? Yeah, sensors in general, and so probably you would still need a custom kernel. That will change, no doubt, in the future. But there's so few of those devices. There's so few Intel-based devices. I would imagine they've all got different custom kernels.
I mean, if you get all the necessary patches and drivers and everything into the Ubuntu archive, it's going to be very easy to produce an image for phones like that. If you just have a look at wiki-ubuntu.com/touch, there's a subsection for all the devices where you could list such a port and where you can see other ports. And there's also /porting, which has the porting guide, but yeah, it might make sense to talk to the people on IRC and on the mailing list to find out more.
Okay, I think we've got a final question.
Oh yeah.
Because we're close to the end of time. Can we have DIY kits or tutorials for Ubuntu phone projects like Arduino or another open source giant has? I don't see why not. It's not something we're going to do. It may well be an interesting homebrew project to create your own phone, but I can't see that's something that we would do. I can't see that making adoption of Ubuntu phone accelerate. What would make Ubuntu phone adoption accelerate is A, once the software is finished, that B, someone makes the phone, and C, they sell it. If they're selling that phone in retail outlets, that's where people buy their phones. They buy their phones from their carriers, and they buy phones from retail outlets. So that's kind of where we need to be to increase adoption. And there's a lot of steps to get there, but the first step is finish the software, and that's what we're working on at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing we didn't even mention was there's XDA DevCon this weekend in Manchester. So if you're going to be there, you can find Ellen and myself giving talks there.
Hello.
Yeah, let's have beers afterwards. So hope to see you there.
So you're giving a talk. What's your talk about?
It's going to be about app development workshop. So if you have a bit of time, you can hang out, and you're going to find. I can help you write your first app for the Ubuntu phone.
Excellent.
How about
I'll come along and I'll write my first app with you. I'm doing a look at the story so far of Ubuntu phone, how it's developed from where it started and where we're going.
And we're also going to have Andrei Kubik there, who's going to talk about hardware bring up and making Ubuntu happen on different kinds of devices. So for all the folks who asked all those questions earlier, maybe coming to Manchester is an option for you.
Cool. I think that's it then.
Week,
we're done.
Yeah, it is. Next week, it's probably going to be Michael and Nicholas. So, and make sure you subscribe to the Ubuntu On Air accounts, all the ones you can find. So, have a great rest of your day. See you.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.